All right, guys, congratulations. This is our last lecture of the semester. The rest of the semester will be finishing Heather's and then making sure you're prepared for your final exam. Congratulations. All right, so we're going to start with the 1930s and 40s and then continually progress into the later 20th century. So let's go ahead and start with an introduction. By the 1930s, clothes become so well specialized that the wardrobe of a well-dressed woman contains costumes for all occasions, such as casual dresses, formal dresses, cocktail dresses. We have a huge variety going on. We begin to revisit a more feminine form after the boxier shape of the 1920s. The ideal shape now is tall, slim, broad-shouldered, and mature. We see wide cape collars, padded shoulders, and epaulettes to help emphasize the broadness of shoulders. Sleeves would typically be shirred or pleated into the padded armscye. All right, so our first icon of this period is Elsa Schiaparelli. She's the primary designer of this fashion, this kind of broad-shouldered woman. She also invents and introduces the color shocking pink, which is a super bright pink, a predecessor of hot pink. Elsa has many artist friends, including Dali, and this helps her to introduce a sort of surrealism in fashion. She makes hats shaped like shoes and lamb chops, introduces some interesting elements, playful elements to her clothing. And she also becomes the originator of decorated sweaters and other novelties. So she's really kind of this artistic figure in fashion. We kind of see this haute couture element with her work. It's a little avant-garde. Okay. For more formal evening occasions, it's a long swirling gown of lace or satin with a short matching jacket, which had broad shoulders and neat lapels. This would be called a dinner suit. The best way to identify this is the short bolero length jacket with a soft moving hem. So you can see here some other examples. They can have long sleeves, they can have short sleeves, but it's a formal dress with a little coat on it. Okay, another fashion for evening wear is the halter dress. This has a kind of bib for a bodice sometimes, or it's split into two as you see here. But the primary way to identify this is that it's drawn up and gathered using a cord or ribbon, or just the dress fabric itself to tie at the back of the neck to hold up the neckline. Here are some other examples. This is also called a shirt maker. The shirtwaist dress is a simple blouse and skirt stitched together to form a practical day dress. So very casual, practical. We see this throughout the majority of the late 20th century. The silhouettes shifting a little bit depending on the desired silhouette of the decade. All right, so the side fastener is a very important invention of the 1930s, and this is most popularly known as the zipper. We all know what this is. It begins to be invented at this point, so closures become a lot easier than they have before. We see a girdle, and this is the reappearance of kind of a corseted waist. The girdle, when paired with a reinforced bra, molds the figure to the desired nip-waisted shape, kind of smoothing out the lines, still giving us a little bit of an hourglass figure. Not nearly as extreme though. More compression. All right, nylon is an invention of the 1940s and was used anywhere from parachutes to hosiery. So we see this in practical utilitarian products as well as fashion products. Pants of all lengths were widely accepted during the 1930s for women, mainly by younger women and typically originally for sportswear and leisure. During the war, women who replaced men in factories would wear trousers to work. So we're talking about World War II here. They were made of flowing fabrics and legs flared below the knee. So they're not super fitted. They're comfortable and practical with a high waist. Slack suits are influenced by Katharine Hepburn, and these kind of come around in the middle of the 1930s, mid to late 1930s. These slack suits are tailored like men's suits and are made of menswear's fabric just for female bodies. All right, blue jeans made by Levi's, especially for women, appeared in 1934 and were originally worn for Western wear. However, they did gradually expand their acceptability for casual occasions. Hats of all types were worn, the beret being the favorite and the turban making a brief comeback. Almost all hats were tilted sharply to one side on the head. Other important accessories for these 1930s, 40s were gloves and handbags. Furs of all types were popular as well. Here you can see how they all have this kind of jaunty tilt on the head. So as we get into the 30s and 40s, the bob of the 20s grew out to a crop and then eventually became shoulder length with only the ends curled under. When we get to the late 30s, early 40s, longer hair was arranged in sausage-like rolls around the face, which are commonly known as victory rolls. I will show you an example of that on the next page. Sometimes it was caught up on top of the head with curled bangs and could be caught in snoods of crocheted chenille, similar to those that we saw in Victorian women. Here in the center here is kind of the beginning of a victory roll, but not quite, so it's its predecessor, but you can see how the length is starting to grow out. And then when we get to the 40s, we see the high victory roll here, named after World War II. And the rising of the feminine figure in the workforce. The center figure is most popular victory roll setting, and the far right is that curled bangs and the snood look that we had mentioned earlier. Shoes become elaborate and sometimes fantastic. We see spike heels being rivaled by the wedge or platform sole, so we're kind of seeing different silhouettes of heels. There were also sandals fashioned with narrow strips as uppers and high heels. Two-tone spectator pumps were popular and flat shoe styles were worn in the city. Saddle shoes, moccasins, slippers, and espadrilles all appeared. Here we can see a little bit of all of those things. Saddle shoes specifically are in the bottom center with the brown strap over the white. All right, so the mid to the late 20th century. Elegance was the word for women's dress during this period immediately following World War II. We're going to see a lot of really refined, beautiful, tailored shapes in women's wear. So let's start with the understructure. Women's shape was not left to change. There are inner structures like lining, boning, padding, and stiffening that we've all seen in the past. We also see stiffened, multi-layered petticoats, long-line bras, and waist cinchers. So the desired silhouette now is kind of becoming more of a bell shape, narrow waist with wider, fuller skirts. Here we see some more understructures. And here we see the petticoat, one being the understructure and then one being worn under that black skirt there. So you can see it gives that kind of bell shape. All right, our icon of the 50s, late 40s, 1947 specifically, is Christian Dior. He introduces the quote-unquote new look. This shocks and inspires its audiences. It's composed of a tiny waist, unpadded shoulders, and a full lower calf length skirt. Here we can see some more of Dior's new look. Absolutely stunning. Other designers also would follow this trend, although pencil slim skirts were also worn, so we do see some fitted skirts, but this primarily becomes the most popular silhouette. Here you can see a slimmer pencil skirt. Sleeves are generally set smoothly into the armscye, this meaning there's not typically tons of ruffling at the shoulders unless you could see it in more formal occasions. It's typical to see summer dresses as sleeveless. So if we're looking at the orange and blue shirts, that's what I'm talking about with the sleeves being set smoothly into the armscye. The pink, the two pink sleeves and the white sleeve have that shirred, gathered ruffling effect into the armscye. That's more typical to see that on a more formal occasion dress. Here you can see all these day looks, day shirts have no gathering in their shoulders. All right, another icon of this period in 1954 is Chanel. She appeals especially to American women. Her suits are simple, collarless, lapel-less, easy-fitting, and often had a decorative braid around the edges of the garment. These remain in fashion for several decades. By the late 50s, though, we see them in a variety of silhouettes, especially with the skirts becoming noticeably shorter. Here are some other examples of that tailored but comfortable silhouette, very practical. Okay, we see cocktail dresses. This is a day-length dress but made of dressy fabric, typically black. We still use this term today. Typically used for cocktail parties, semi-formal occasions. In this period, we see the introduction of capri pants, dirndl skirts, and circle skirts. Sometimes they would have those iconic poodles on them. We're in the age of Grease. Stretched nylon swimsuits also appear, which helps create a form-fitting shape, and the bikini is introduced. Scandalous. Here we see some of those skirts with the decorations on them, and then some capri pants here on the right. Hats in this period were typically small and close-fitting. If they had wide brims, it would typically only be worn in the summer. So this would be a summer look. This could be year-round looks. All right, the invention of pantyhose appears. Unlike its predecessor, the two legs are joined together all the way to the waist. So not just two separate hose with a garter belt. This is much like the kind of evolution that we saw happen with men's hose in the Renaissance. So it is one item of clothing rather than two and then a fastener. So when we get to the 1960s, we start to see some androgyny in clothing. T-shirts, jeans, and long hair were worn by both sexes. Personal appearance becomes much less formal, and we see the desire for freedom and sexuality progress with equal rights. Along with this comes a lot of different artworks. We see op art, psychedelic art, and pop art. I'm going to go to the next page just so you can see. So op art, starting on our far left here, this is an art form which capitalizes on intense optical effects which use geometrical patterns to create the illusion of movement. The center being psychedelic art, this suggested what someone may see under the influence of drugs. So we're seeing a lot of wild colors, fluid movements, etc. And then to our far right, we have pop art. And this technique used popular subjects and then adapted them to form commercial art. Another excellent example of this is the Campbell soup can. Andy Warhol is primarily the leading artist for this style. All right, another icon of this period is Mary Quant, and she is the inventor of the miniskirt. So skirts get shorter and shorter and shorter. Okay, another icon is André Courage. This Paris designer was inspired by spacesuits of astronauts and produced day and evening wear in white and silver. These were often accompanied with a helmet-like hat and mid-calf white boots. We see peekaboo styles with holes of vinyl, bands in unique places, sheer blouses, lace, evening pants, and a large amalgamation of eclectic fashion. It's got that super harsh futurism vibe. Here you can see some more examples of that. So the shift dress barely touches the body after it leaves the shoulder. It was typically short-sleeved or sleeveless, and these sleeveless dresses were an invitation for decoration of all sorts. So you could see them wildly patterned, plain as we see here on Twiggy, but they're a blank canvas for lots and lots of decoration if desired. A specific popular style of hair in this period is the beehive. This is an extremely full silhouette of hair, teased and piled up onto the top of the head. You would typically see bangs with this look. All right, the 70s to the 80s. Personal appearance is now far less formal than ever before. Blue jeans peak in popularity in the 70s. T-shirts and sweaters carry mottos, advertising pictures and social comments. Boundaries between sportswear, casual business, and formal was fluid. This is a period of extreme diversity in dress. One specific garment is the culottes, and this is a divided skirt. So it's the same length as the skirt, hits at the same place in the waist in the skirt, but is separated into two legs. We also see parkas, which are puffy quilted coats. These would be filled with down or some kind of synthetic batting to keep you warm. right, hair calms down and we see a lightly waved, free-flowing style, as we kind of see on Farrah Fawcett here. We're not going to go too far into the 80s and 90s, just because information is so easily readily available, and I just kind of want us to enjoy Heathers. It's filmed in a contemporary time, so it will almost exclusively be costume analysis. I hope you guys have a great rest of your break, and I will see you on Wednesday.